It's time to start.
It's time now for Stanley's Stinkers, the only show that uses reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football's biggest games. With this week's losers, here he is, Stanley Reese.
Hello again, and thanks for joining us. The Stinkometer took a bashing last week as we finished with a 14-6 mark, but our season stats still boast a hefty 78% standing. That's not bad considering the fact we don't back away from the big games. Nope, Stanley Stinkers uses reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football. With that said, here are the games we're watching this weekend. Western Carolina Catamounts at the Auburn Tigers. For those who may have been traveling on Interstate 85 in East Alabama over the weekend, that flash you saw was the Gus Bus. It's now approaching full speed. New head coach Gus Malzahn has his striped cats playing with the confidence they lacked a year ago, and it was evidence in their win against Ole Miss. This week should be even easier as the FCS Catamounts come to town sporting a 1-5 record. Western Carolina has given up more than 250 points in those 6 games, and with the Gus Bus hitting on all cylinders, the Catamounts might get catawamped in this one. Stanley Stinker, Western Carolina. South Carolina Gamecocks at the Arkansas Razorbacks. Prize defensive end Jadeveon Clowney couldn't have picked a worse time to leave his roost with the Gamecocks, as the task this week is to shut down the Wild Pig Assault. Arkansas's Alex Collins ranks in the top 10 rushers nationally, and he could have a breakout performance at home with no one to hold him back. The head ball coach will have to count on his offense to pile up the points just to match the Biggie. Look for a high-scoring game, but with or without Clowney, the healthy choice is always chicken. Stanley Stinker, Arkansas. Baylor Bears and the Kansas State Wildcats. The high-flying Bears hit the other Manhattan this weekend with the #1 offense in the country. The aerial circus that's now become Baylor University is averaging 70 points per game. But look for Kansas State to try to take a key conference win by deflating that big top and Baylor quarterback Bryce Petty. He is the #1 passer in the country. Even if he stopped, the Wildcats still have to deal with Lachey Seastrunk. Not an easy task for any team. Stanley Stinker, Kansas State. Well, stay tuned. We've got more coming up, including games with the bleeping Dabo Sweeney, Johnny Football, and the tale of 2 men named Mac Brown. That and more coming up.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't seen your lap in months. And even more stuff. But still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
The Alabama Crimson Tide at the Kentucky Wildcats. The Wildcats held their own last week against a formidable foe, and they can only hope this week that the Crimson Pachyderms don't bring their A game to Commonwealth Stadium. The Wildcats have shown steady improvement this season, but so have the defending national champions. You cannot take any game lightly, but for Alabama, this is just part of that legendary process. Stanley Stinker, Kentucky. Boston College Eagles at the Clemson Tigers. Dabo Sweeney's Cats are still undefeated and looking for at least a chance at the BCS crown. While their biggest test of the season might come next week, they'll first have to ground the Eagles. Boston College is better than their record reflects, as evidenced in the first half of their game against FSU. This could be the test before the test for quarterback Todd Boyd and Clemson. They don't need to take this exam lightly. Stanley Stinker, Boston College. Texas A&M Aggies at the Ole Miss Rebels. The Insurgents will be glad to get back to Oxford this weekend after 2 straight losses in the state of Alabama, but their guest this week is not planning on being very nice to the host in the Grove. The Aggies are still in the hunt for the SEC West title, and a misstep would ruin those plans. This is a game that could surprise some people, especially if Ole Miss can finally regain their offensive firepower. And that may be possible against an A&M defense that statistically ranks near the bottom nationally. With a week off to prepare, though, the Aggies should be able to at least stop a few drives. Stanley Stinker, Ole Miss. The Missouri Tigers at the Georgia Bulldogs. Surprisingly, the Cats from Missouri are undefeated and tied for the top spot in the SEC. and they couldn't have picked a better time to play the Dogs. Ever since the first game, Georgia's been hit hard by injuries, and they lost several more key players last week in a narrow win over Tennessee. With two top rushers hobbled and the receivers depleted, this could be a shining moment for UGA quarterback Aaron Murray, especially against the Mizzou pass defense that ranks 98th in the nation. A serious cat and dog fight between the bushes, but Stanley Stinker, Missouri. Well, we're getting closer to the top games in the country. That includes the Quackers on upset alert and a slobber knocker in Baton Rouge. Those games and a few more coming up. Stanley Stinkers is sponsored each week by AnytimeCostumes.com. This is the one-stop place for everything Halloween, from kids to adults, fierce to feisty. Click on the link on our sponsors page for special discounts. AnytimeCostumes.com. By CBSSports.com Fan Shop. It's the place for all the latest college football, Major League Baseball, NFL, and even NASCAR gear. From tees to hats to jewelry, jackets. It's the perfect place to shop for your school colors.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners in Dallas. This is the Red River rivalry, a game that's been around a lot longer than those fans who are calling for the dismissal of Texas coach Mack Brown. But after losing by a combined score of 118-38 to the Land Thieves over the last 2 years, those same fans will be even more vocal if Texas doesn't pull off the upset. With an Oklahoma offense led by the Belldozer and a defense that's giving up less than 2 touchdowns per game, it doesn't look good for the Horns, and they're in battle coach Stanley Stinker at the old Cotton Bowl, Texas. Florida Gators at the LSU Tigers. The other Mack Brown will play a key role in this game between SEC powerhouses. This Mack Brown is a hard-nosed running back for the Swamp Lizards who will need to take on an LSU defense that's been known for shutting down the run. But that same defense will also have to deal with Florida quarterback that's more accurate than the heralded LSU quarterback, Zach Mettenberger. In the old days, they'd call this one a slobber knocker. These days, I call it an upset. Stanley Stinker, LSU. Oregon Ducks at the Washington Huskies. Well, the Sled Dogs have been one of the many surprises this season in the Pac-12 Conference, but their run gets tough this week against Oregon. The Quackers' offense is averaging almost 60 points per game, but the Washington defense has held their foes to only 14 per game. Something's got to give, and it might be Marcus Mariota. The Flying Hawaiian has not thrown a pick all year, and he'll have to be sharp against the Huskies defense that ranks 3rd in the nation. This is the #1 game in the country this week for a reason. And Stanley Stinker is Washington. While we're at it, here are a few more games that show up this week on the Stinkometer. Georgia Tech will be stung by BYU. Bowling Green will be bitten by Mississippi State. Wisconsin will lose to Northwestern. Indiana will fall to Michigan State. Kansas will be grounded by TCU. Pitt will be pegged by Virginia Tech. Cal will lose to UCLA in the Battle of the Bears. Washington State will be backed up by Oregon State. Utah will lose to Stanford. And between the mills at the old Callaway Stadium, the Maryville College Scots will get killed by the LaGrange College Panthers. Stanley Stinkers is a production of GMD Sports. It is intended for entertainment only. Any rebroadcast or reproduction of Stanley Stinkers without the expressed written permission of me, Stanley Reese, is appreciated. Stanley Stinkers, the only show in America that uses reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football's biggest games.